I'm Jerry Howard, your host, your leadership coach, your certified jail inspector, and we're back with another Intrepid Impact leadership broadcast. Again, Intrepid Impact leadership broadcast. The goal here every week is to give you some information on how you can take an intrepid impact or an intrepid approach to your leadership. And what we've been talking about over the last number of weeks here is the 5 leadership voices. When we talk about a leadership voice, we're talking about a way of communicating. And sometimes that way of communicating involves not communicating. So when we get into the 5 leadership voices, we're trying to understand why would people need to understand somebody else's leadership voice. Have you ever been in a meeting where you're trying to figure out why nobody's listening or why it seems like nobody's listening? Have you ever had an idea where you thought you conveyed something very clearly, but then no one understood you? Or once they left and got out of the meeting, they had a meeting after the meeting to try to figure out, what did the boss just say? Well, if you've been in that, then you need to pay attention to the 5 leadership voices, because you only have one leadership voice and maybe you speak another one, kinda. But the real goal here is to understand all the leadership voices. So you know not only who you're talking to, but you also understand how you communicate. Because it would be silly to think that we don't have blind spots, right? And in fact, those blind spots are the reason why teams in general function at 60% of their potential. Yeah, I'll say it again, at less than 60%, actually. The number is actually 58. And I don't know if you remember what a 58 was in grammar school. Yeah, right, failing, right? So teams on average fail. That's an average. That means some are in the 40s, some are in the 70s, some are in the 90s, but it's not accidental. You have to be intentional if you're going to be a 100x leader, if you're going to be an intrepid impact leader, 100% healthy and multiplying yourself. So the 5 leadership voices is really the foundation to becoming an intrepid impact leader. Now, when we have those 5 leadership voices, a number of them are very quiet or much quieter than the others. So because of that, 82% of team members feel misunderstood or undervalued. And team leaders rarely, if ever, hear the truth from their people. Yeah, I'll say that again. Team leaders rarely hear the truth from their people. And sometimes they can't even say the truth, even if they are the leader. You might recall that in addition to being a certified jail inspector, I was also a hospital administrator. Yeah, that's right. Somebody took the jailbird and put them in charge of hospitals. I'm going to give God the credit for that one, because it happened within 4 years of me being in my last jail inspecting role. But even as the leader of the hospital, there were still things and times and circumstances where I couldn't say the truth because I knew how it was going to affect a certain person. Well, the people sitting around the table, the people in your family, in your church, in your community, they're thinking the same thing. They're like, I can't tell him that because he's not going to get it. He's going to get all mad. I was thinking another word, but I'm just going to say he's going to get all mad. So what happens? So leaders undermine their influence without even knowing it. No one's ever coming to tell them. See, the 5 leadership voices will set you free. It will make sure that you understand how to communicate the best way you know how, but also how to communicate in the way that others can receive it. Because if there's 5 and you only speak 1, that means 4 out of 5 people are probably not understanding you. And so in the past couple episodes, we talked about a quick overview of all 5 voices, and we were digging into the creative voice. So I'm going to start with the nurturer and remind you that the nurturer voice is like a medic. That person is all about others. They're champions of people, harmony, and values. That means they don't want to upset the herd, which is why they're the quietest voice, because they want everybody to get along and be happy. Now, that's great, except if they know that something needs to be said or done, and now they don't feel like they can share. So we as leaders have to empower the nurturer voice. And why would we want to do that? They represent 43% of the population, and they're very present tense oriented. So that means they represent 43% of people. 4 out of 10 people share the nurturer voice as their primary means of communication. And if they're very present tense oriented, then they're going to know instinctively, how is this going to affect people right now? You need to empower the nurturer voice. You should check out our previous shows to learn more about the nurturer voice. We dug real deep a couple of episodes ago. The next one is the creative voice. Now, the creative Doesn't always mean just painting pretty pictures. It means they certainly can, but all the voices could paint a pretty picture. The creative voice is someone who sees the future. And we're digging in deep today on the creative voice, but I'll just tell you real quick, they're champions of future ideas, organizational integrity, and innovation. But only 9% of the population speaks first voice creative, so they're often misunderstood. Why? Because they talk future. And if you're a present tense voice, you're not going to understand them. So if you're a leader and you're talking future to a nurturer, you're going to have to bring your verbiage right back into the present. How does this affect people now? That's how you talk to the nurturer. And if you're a nurturer, you've got to talk to the creative in a way that shows the future. How does this affect the future? So we can all speak all five, but some are more natural to us than others. And then the next voice is the guardian. Now that is just how it sounds. They protect systems, resources, due diligence, and processes. Here's the cool thing. They're the ones that get the work done. If you ever wondered how everything got done when you were away, let's say you're the boss and you're off, touring another facility and everything's, the guardians are the ones that are getting the work done. They have lots of questions because why? They need to know how it's going to get done. Once they agree to understanding not only the vision, but also the process, you can be sure that the guardian will make sure it gets done on time and under budget. Give a guardian a thing and you do not have to worry about it. But you've got to understand they're going to have lots of questions. And also remember, they are very present tense oriented. How does this affect our resources now? That's what the guardian's thinking about. And cool thing is 30% of the population is a first voice guardian, which means 30% of the people in the world are very present tense oriented. 9% future oriented, that's the creative, and then 43% are the nurturers, very present tense oriented. So you can see 73% of the population is thinking about the here and now, both with systems and resources, as well as how this affects people. But if we take 43, 9, and 30, we add it up, we get 82%. And now you know why 82% of team members feel misunderstood or undervalued. And team leaders rarely, if ever, hear the truth from their people because these are the quieter voices. Now, on to the fourth voice, that's the connector. The connector is all about relationships. They know tons of people. They always have a resource for materials that are needed. They always understand how to get effective collaboration, and they're fantastic communicators. Why? Because they bring passion and energy and excitement. You will always know the connectors in the room because they're super excited about whatever new idea they're onto now. And big surprise, your leadership coach, your certified jail inspector is a first voice connector. So not surprising that you'd hear me on the radio. 11% of the population speaks connector as their first voice. So 1 out of 10 people essentially are going to be a connector, but they're going to know everybody else. So it's great to know a connector because they're going to find the resources you need. Last voice is the pioneer, certainly not least. They're the strongest, most strategic voice. They're all about problem solving, and they represent 7. Yes, single digit there. 7% of the population speaks pioneer. So if you're a pioneer and you're all about solving problems and getting up the mountaintop and achieving everything, and you wonder why people always worry about people, et cetera, they're not crazy. You're not crazy either. Just remember, 93% of the population doesn't communicate the way you do. They don't have the same values that you do. And if you're working for a pioneer and you're wondering why they don't care about anybody, it's not that they don't care. They do care, but they can't take their eyes off the goal. They are wired like a fighter jet that's locked onto the enemy. Once that tone goes solid, hey, there's no turning back. There's no changing. Once they lock their ideas on a goal, they will achieve it. So they're great to have around. They're great in leadership. But here's the cool thing, pioneers. If you learn to listen to all the other 4 voices, you will always achieve your goal. You are guaranteed success. Yeah, I'll say it again, guaranteed success. So if you're a pioneer out there and you're wondering how you're going to achieve the goal with limited resources, listen to the other people. Let them go first and encourage the quieter voices to speak up first. Then you amass all the information, move the chess pieces around, and meet your goal. It's a guaranteed win. So again, that's the 5 leadership voices. That's the total of all the leadership voices. And we're all a combination of all 5, but one of these 5 is most strong with each one of us. So you owe it to yourself to pay attention to all 5 voices. Now, when we come back from the break, we're going to dig in a little bit deeper on the creative voice, just like we did last week. Again, I'm Jerry Howard, ESPN Richmond Radio. This is your Intrepid Impact Leadership Broadcast. We'll be back in a minute.